Very proud to have Mitch Henderson on once a month. This man has a deep state understanding and an intelligence background that few radio programs are privileged to have. And we're going to talk about this from a perspective that many others couldn't do. Mitch really has a full understanding and comprehension of the Iran crisis. Hello, Mitch. Thanks for being here. Welcome back. 2020, hell on wheels, as I've been saying already.
How you doing, Jeff?
Fine, thanks. Let's jump into this Iran thing. How do we get here? The CIA has blood all over its hands for many decades. Let's put it that way when it comes to Iran. This is a dirty, long-term history that we're talking about.
Okay, well, let me just tell you. So when I wrote my book, Man Beyond His Mission, I finished it last year, and it's available on Amazon. But the thing is at that time I was trying to uncover a lot of false narratives that I knew from experience with the military, with the police, working with the government, and sometimes at the highest levels. Since then, there's a weird thing, but when you start uncovering false narratives, you begin to see more and more. It accelerates. You open your eyes to things. Now, one thing that I learned to do in military intelligence was try to see things the way the enemy sees things. So I get a lot of my perspective. I don't get it from the American media. If something's happening in Iran, I'll read the Iranian media, the Kurdish media, the Turkish media, the Al Jazeera, the Jerusalem Post. I mean, I'll read everybody who's
Press
concerned
TV.
with Iran.
Sure.
Right. To get as much different views as I can to put the picture together. Well, what had happened is back in the spring, when the current escalation between Iran and the United States began last spring, I was watching on Iranian TV. Okay, and they had the foreign minister on, and the interviewer was asking the foreign minister questions, and he asked him a very interesting question. He asked him, he said, do you think that Trump wants war with Iran? And the foreign minister said, well, no, Trump doesn't want war with Iran. The B team wants war with Iran. Now,
The B team.
I never heard that term before. But then I listened to Russian news just 2 weeks later, and they were asking the Russian foreign minister if Trump wanted war with Russia. And the foreign minister says, well, no, Trump doesn't want a war with us, but the B team wants war with us.
Oh, twice you heard. That's fascinating. Your ears must have been, wow.
Once from Iran and once from Russia. So I was like, okay, well, who is this B team? Is this the deep state? Is this the military-industrial complex? Is this the national security state? Just who is the B team? So I started researching. It was very interesting. It goes back into 1977. George H.W. Bush was the director of the CIA. In 1977, Jimmy Carter fired him, along with 2,900 CIA agents. Okay.
That's a lot. That's a lot of people.
Yes, it is. And they called those 2,900 CIA agents the Cowboys. Okay, and the B team included the Cowboys plus Bush, plus people like Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, Paul Wolfowitz, Elliot A. Abrams, John Bolton. I mean, all these people were in the B team, and eventually the Clintons became a part of the B team also. Okay, so it goes across party lines also. It's not just one party.
Sure.
So anyways, the first act of the B team was to get Carter out of power. Well, when the Iranians took the embassy and took the hostages, the Ayatollah Khomeini, he was inclined to just obey international diplomatic law and say, hey, yeah, you got to cut them loose, good job, students, and time for them to go. Well, the B team flew over to meet with Ayatollah and gave him $24 million to keep the hostages until the elections and not let them go until President Reagan and Vice President George H.W. Bush were elected.
Yeah.
And on the very day that they were sworn into office, the Iranians let the hostages go, as promised. Okay? So the reason why the Iranians hate B Team so much is because immediately after that, Donald Rumsfeld flew to Iraq and met with Saddam Hussein and said, look, Iran's really weak now. Why don't you attack now? We'll give you intelligence. We'll sell you arms. We'll back you up in every way except get involved in the war. So Saddam attacked. And, it didn't go well because that war strung out for 8 years, from 1980 to 1988, what they call the First Gulf War. It killed over 1 million people on each side, okay?
On each side?
When the war was on each side,
I didn't know. That's huge. Wow, 2 million.
It was a very bloody war. So anyways, what happened is, actually, the Ayatollahs may not have made it except for the invasion by Iraq, which any time that you have a government that becomes invaded, people will rally around that government, no matter how bad that government is. People will always, go to their government's defense, whatever.
Something that Bibi Netanyahu is more than well aware of, I'm sure. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. People, actually, if you look through history, like when the British attacked the Argentines attacked the Falkland Wars, it was because the dictators were failing and they needed to unify the country, so they invaded the Falkland Islands. It's a common ploy used by government. So at any rate, after Saddam goes through all this trouble and all this expense, then he calls in April Glaspie, U.S. ambassador to Iraq, and she's a beachhead, of course. That's what she's doing in Iraq all this time. She's the front man supporting Saddam and attacking Iran. And he calls her together and says, well, what if we invade Kuwait to recoup the losses we incurred in fighting the Iranians? How is the United States going to feel about that? And April Glaspie told him, it's none of our concern what you do, She green-lighted him. Now, what's funny is this was actually in the newspaper at the time. This is not a secret. This was actually put out in the newspaper at the time, okay?
When he said, Mitch, one question. When he said to recoup our losses, the cover story was that the Kuwaitis were slant drilling into Iraqi oil fields. True or not true? And I guess if not true, he just wanted the Kuwaiti oil. That's what he wanted.
Well, he was very open about he wanted the Kuwaiti oil in order to pay for the Gulf War. He was pretty open about that. And if you look at maps from back in the 1980s, the area around Kuwait, in both Iraq and Saudi Arabia, there's these little shaded places on the map that were in dispute. Okay? So some of the slant drilling was into those areas. They were already disputed areas.
I see. It was really not that big of a deal. All right. The idea was he
green-lighted.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So imagine this. So the Iranians just experienced the B team stabbing them in the back using Saddam, and then they watch us stab Saddam in the back. Okay. So that George Bush can invade, unite the world, and if you remember all his New World Order speeches and stuff. This was his New World Order moment.
That's when they first started. Yeah.
Okay, but now, what Bush did is he said, well, listen, his next act was to invade Somalia. He did that. It was a humanitarian mission to feed people. Okay. So, then Clinton becomes president, and he's president when the actual, Black Hawk Down and all that happens in Mogadishu. Well, the interesting thing is, who was the head of the United Nations relief agency in charge of feeding people in Somalia? April Glaspie was in charge. Okay, and she's the one who pushed the mission creep to go after Mohammed Farah Aidid, who is not necessarily anti-American. His very own son was an American Marine, Okay, so he wasn't
Wow.
naturally anti-American. His son was
Right.
in the U.S. Marine Corps.
Got it.
And but April Glaspie decided to target him as the bad guy because he was the strongest warlord. Okay, he was the guy who could have won by order, in other words. So they had to get rid of him because we needed disorder in Somalia. Faradid was also on our side because the previous dictator, Siad Barre, was a communist and was Moscow-oriented. And Faradid was one of the generals that overthrew him, which was to the Americans' benefit. We paid him. We assisted him in doing that. That was the B team. The B team put Mohammed Faradid on the map, and then the B team stabbed him in the back. Okay.
Wow.
By this Somalia mission creep. Okay. Then, of course, in 2000, George Bush was elected president, and guess who came to power? The B team. Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, everybody who had been involved since 1977 was now in power in the government. Okay. Okay. And then, of course, Obama appoints Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, so the B team is intimately involved in warfare. Now, they had a list of countries they needed to overthrow. In Libya, Muammar Gaddafi had, after 9/11, he proved invaluable to us. He had black sites for us. He did a lot of espionage and counter-espionage for us. He did a lot of work in counterterrorism for us. Okay, but he was on the B team's list to be taken out. So in 2011, Hillary, as Secretary of State, as you know, took him out. Okay. What was interesting about this too is on their list was Syria and Iran also. Well, Iraq was on the list, but they took it out, of course. Somalia was on the list, they took it out. So that left Syria and Iran. So Syria has the whole Benghazi thing. What the CIA was doing in Benghazi is they were buying guns to ship to Al-Qaeda in Syria. Okay. We also shipped the Turks $500 million to pay for the creation of ISIS. And the concept of ISIS is they wanted a Sunni state between Syria and Iraq so that Iran would not have a complete arc going from Iran across Iraq into Syria, into Lebanon, to the Mediterranean.
To the Med, right all the way down. So they put the Sunnis in there to shut... Iran is essentially Shiite, just to understand that, everyone. And the Sunnis were a bloc. Okay.
Right, and Assad is Alawite, which is a sect of Shia Islam. Okay, so it's a Shia government. It's secular, but the leadership is Shia. Okay,
got it.
And that's why they allow Hezbollah and all that to go on. Okay, so then who is the national security advisor for Trump up until just a few months ago? But John Bolton. As a matter of fact, John Bolton is the national security advisor when we started the current escalation with Iran back in the spring of 2019. Okay, and John Bolton is a career B team guy. Okay, so this is a long history. This is the B team is it's very specific people.
You know, Mitch, if I were a foreign government and I were contacted by anyone from the U.S. and on an intel basis like this, or a geopolitical intrigue bait, whatever, I don't think I'd trust them. I mean, this is all known. The betrayals, the backstabbing, the assassinations, the murders. We're a pretty treacherous country to deal with, aren't we?
Oh, well, we've always been treacherous. I mean, we abandoned the Taiwanese for the Communist Chinese. We abandoned the Hmong Hill tribesmen of Laos. We just Jimmy Carter just let them be genocided with yellow rain, and did nothing, denied that there was a problem. And these people helped us during the Vietnam War. I mean, they were rock solid allies. I happened to have gone to Laos and had the privilege of working with the Hmong and stuff, and they were good allies. They were as solid as you could get.
I've heard
and we just blew them off like they were trash, completely betrayed them. And then, of course, we betrayed the Kurds. So we do this all the time. Whoever helps them, we'll end up stabbing them in the back.
This is a trite and rather cliched expression, but I've made it so often on this program. Human life just means nothing to these people, B-teamers or whoever you want to call them. They don't care. They just don't care.
Well, look how many people have lost their life since 2003, the invasion of Iraq. But really, you need to go back to 2001, because ultimately, who is it that blew up the Twin Towers?
Yeah.
It was the B team.
The B team, you bet. I got it.
Yeah. They're the ones who did it. So they did it so they could have this massive expansion of the CIA, the FBI, Homeland Security. I mean, the biggest expansion in government power in American history. It took away our Fourth Amendment rights. The Patriot Act is basically violating the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution.
I know. We killed on that day approximately 3,000 people. Wiped out all the accounting records of where that $2 or $3 trillion vanished to, according to the Pentagon official. What was his name? Rabbi, what's his name anyway?
I can't remember his name. I remember the story, but I can't remember his name.
Yeah, well, that cruise missile just happened to hit that exact point in the Pentagon where all those accountants were gathered with all their data to try to find out where the $2 or $3 trillion went. Wow. And look at the cachet we got for killing 3,000 Americans. As you just said, an enormous expansion of power, a gigantic expansion for just 3,000 American lives. Hell, the way they look at it, we kill 45,000 a year on America's roads and highways, so what's another 3,000? That's the way they look at it.
Well, also you have to remember that on a given day at the World Trade Center, there's 50,000 people there. If terrorists actually attacked, their goal was to kill 50,000 people. Well,
correct.
Why did only 3,000 people die? I mean, I'm asking questions. Why only 3,000 out of 50,000? What was so special? Why only one FBI agent when they had an FBI office in the building? Why only one?
Only
agent?
One.
I mean, maybe he didn't like you or something. He was the
and how many Jewish Americans died that day? It is said that very few went to work or were at work that day. So anyway,
most people weren't there.
We all know the story. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, it goes way. It's one of the things that I've done in my studies too is when we go to war in another country, one of the things that we typically do is we try to do an exhaustive what they call area study or country study. Okay, so that we learn about the history of that country and why they think the way they think, why they feel the way they feel, because it's their history amongst their neighboring countries that causes them to react in a certain way, and we need to understand that. Okay, the human terrain as well as the physical terrain. Okay, so just consider with Russia and stuff. I mean, most Americans think Russia is the aggressor, but in fact, what has happened is, we told Russia in 1989, well, if the wall comes down and whatnot, we won't move 1 inch to the east. Well, we're right on the Russian border now. So that's more than
remember what Donald Trump promised during the 18-month campaign. We're pulling our troops away from NATO. We've had enough of NATO. We don't belong over there. What did he do on the first day? The first day in office, he announced that 5,000 more American troops and heavy armor were going to Europe to stand with our NATO brothers. That's what he was told to do, and he did it. First day.
Oh Oh yeah, definitely. It's like why? I had the question of why are we sending $500 million worth of arms, giving it to the Ukraine? How would we feel if Russia gave that much money to Mexico?
Exactly.
With
Yep.
arms.
Yep.
I mean, we would see that as an act of aggression. But yet we expect Russia to just take it lying down, like, they're the bad people, we're the good people.
We're going to pay the price at some point, Mitch. The chickens are coming home.
We will. Yeah. I think we may be paying the price sooner than we think. Okay, because we keep pushing and pushing. And see, the American public doesn't realize, they don't have a real conception of how much we're pushing. But we're really pushing hard. We've had U.S. troops in the Ukraine for like the last 5 years. I've talked to troops that went to the Ukraine. American soldiers stationed in the Ukraine. Ukraine is not a NATO ally. We do not have a mutual defense pact with it or anything. So from the Russian point of view, who's the aggressor?
I agree.
And but we say things like, well, when Russia took Crimea, well, that was an act against international law. But Russia says, well, no, wait, you go into Serbia. Well, first of all, they say you go into Iraq without UN permission. You go into Libya without UN permission. You go into Serbia and start bombing it without UN permission. Not only do you do that, but you cut off a piece of Serbia, Kosovo, and then you declare it independent. And none of that is approved by the United Nations. Not even all NATO countries recognize Kosovo as an independent country.
Right. Stand by right there, Mitch, if you would. I have to take a break here.
Sure.
Running a tiny bit late. Back with Mitchell Henderson in just a couple of minutes. Stand by. Fascinating retrospective, bringing us right up to full speed. Back in a minute. Okay, let's get right back to Mitchell Henderson. All right, this is fascinating. Just a quick aside here. What did you think of, despots are despots, dictators are dictators. But I saw a documentary before the first Gulf War in Iraq, before the Clintons and their no-fly zone and all of that, when George Herbert Walker Bush attacked and did that and then stopped. And that documentary was on CNN. It ran about a half an hour. And it was an honest, good, fair, balanced look at Iraq under Saddam. And it was damn near, I would say, a first world country in many respects. Certainly in Baghdad, first world city. Heart surgeons, people from all over the world were going there for heart surgery, universities, freeways, parks, museums, all of that. Baghdad was quite a remarkable city, culture. It had it all. What did you think about Saddam and Iraq and what we did to it? How does that strike you at this point?
Well, listen, he was a secular leader.
Say again, please. I'm sorry. One more time.
Saddam was a secular leader. Okay.
Yes.
He did not, in order to control the sectarianism in his country, he had to have a secular state. So they did not have Sharia law. There was a guy in Lebanon, not Lebanon, but Syria, way back in the 1960s named Michel Aflaq. And he was a Christian Arab, and he started what they called the Ba'ath Party, okay? And what the Ba'ath Party meant was the Arab Renaissance Party. And it was a secular party. Actually, Assad is that secular party. Okay. One of the reasons why Russia supports Assad, besides having a military base in Syria, is Assad protects minorities like Christians, Druze, other sects. The people that we backed in Syria were crucifying Christians and killing Christians, murdering them. Okay, that's who our taxpayers went to kill Christians. Okay, so I think in this whole thing, you have to kind of look at a bigger picture. By getting Gaddafi out of the way, what did we do? He held back all those African migrants and stuff that went over to Europe. he held them back. And once he was gone, they just flooded it. They're flooding into Europe now, even to this day. Libya is the place that they go, okay? Look what we did in Syria. We ran all the Syrians into Europe. But so there's a second goal to this, and it was to actually destroy European civilization, okay? It's part of a much bigger plan, you know?
Yes, thank you.
And so they're destroying, they've just about destroyed Christianity in the Middle East. You know, I've seen figures as high as 90,000 Christians murdered for their faith a year in the Middle East. Now, since George Bush invaded, okay. So we haven't done, you know, whose interest is all this in? Okay. Well, I'll get to a point. Okay. There was a guy back in the 1830s who had two ideas simultaneously. One was to set up an Israeli state, and one was to create a world communist state with its headquarters in Israel. This man's name was Moses Hess. Okay, and Moses Hess, he's the one who preached communism to Marx and Engels. And he's the one who preached Zionism to Theodore Herzl. He is the originator. He taught Theodore Herzl
how to play the game. Exactly.
Right,
Hess was the father of Zionism, among other things.
And communism. And you know, his books are for sale. They're in the open. You can buy Moses Hess's books at Barnes and Noble. You can board them. Okay, so it's not like this is covered up and it's a secret. You can go read it. Anything that's communist, you can actually go read it. Okay. You have to consider what information is suppressed is off limit, and what information is perfectly okay for everybody to read. Okay. But you can read Maoism, you can read communism, you can read Leninism, Trotskyitism, anything like that. As a matter of fact, a lot of people call the B team Trotskyites. Okay. Because they were against the communism and one nation of the Soviet Union. Okay, they actually, you know, accused them of being international communists. Okay?
Right.
And if you ever listen to a B team of being addressed, sometimes they'll try to call them neocon, and they'll deny that label. Okay, because they're not conservative about anything. You know, they have a goal, a big goal, a big picture. You know,
whose idea was it? Where did this? What is the genesis of destroying Western white Christian civilization? Cui bono?
Well, the reason to do it is because in order to have a globalist one world government, you must have to destroy all the previous power centers. Okay?
No more nationalism.
Right, no more nationalism. You have to create a globalist economy, which they've done. You have to create a global culture, and that culture is actually cultural Marxism is the culture that they're imposing on everybody, and that's a culture that's really an anti-culture. It's to destroy all culture, to destroy all distinctions between people, and this is all necessary for a one world government. It's about power, okay, and it goes way back. I mean, it's their strategy. Which they called the inevitability of gradualism. In other words, way back in the 18th century, these people didn't expect to accomplish these goals in their lifetime. They thought it would be generations before it would be accomplished and stuff. So they were in for the long game. You know, they were gonna adapt us slowly into becoming what we are today. Okay. To destroy our culture, to destroy our way of life. And unfortunately for them, the only thing really standing in the way, and this is important for people to understand, the only thing standing socialist, one-world totalitarian government is the United States Bill of Rights. Okay, because it's the only obstacle they have. They have to get rid of it.
That's the Constitution. Understand?
Yes.
Yeah.
They got to get rid of it. They got to get rid of your First Amendment rights, your Second Amendment rights. Let's get rid of all of it. Okay, because no other country on earth has that.
No other
most countries
country
don't even have
on
a constitution.
Earth. Nope.
And we're the only nation on earth with a Bill of Rights. And that's an obstacle. The problem is they have to get rid of every concept of individualism. Everybody must be collectivist. And the reason why they're so strongly attacking Europeans is because European culture is very individualist. The rugged individual is very highly respected in European culture. So if you go back to World War I, you can kind of see what was going on. G.W.F. Hegel, a German philosopher, he wrote a book called A Philosophy of History. If you read that philosophy, he said, well, we've had to have these great empires to civilize the world. So the first was like the Egyptians, and then the Greeks, and the Romans. He said, in the next big civilization jump is supposed to be the German empire. So, like German Enlightenment and Lutheranism were supposed to be the thing that moved the world forward in its evolution. Okay. Well, World War I was fought to destroy that idea. World War II was fought to destroy that idea. Okay. They had to.
As Churchill admitted in his biography, he said this war had nothing to do with National Socialism or Adolf Hitler. It had to do with destroying Germany, the German culture, and the German people. That's what it was. That's why somewhere around 8 to 10 million Germans were murdered after the war ended, 1945 to 1953, as you know, to destroy Germany. That was the game.
Well, I even saw the figure that during the war, 4.5 million Germans died. That's including German soldiers and civilians. And from 1945 until 1954, the high estimate is 30 million Germans were murdered. That includes
30 million.
14 million by the Americans, 16 million by the Soviets and stuff. Okay, so what Hitler had feared is the original communist revolution was supposed to take place in Germany. Hitler knew this. Hitler said that we have to stop the Bolsheviks because the Bolsheviks were like 85% Jewish. They murdered 30 million Russians. And
right.
He said, well, this is what they intend for us. Well, listen, they get it to Germany. They get in the statement. Okay. But all the this is like as a policeman, I have to ask this question. Okay, so the question that I have to ask is, okay, so we have a Holocaust museum. We remember the Holocaust because we say never forget. Okay, yet since 1945 there has been 37 genocides in the world since then. Some going on right now. There's been 14 genocides that killed over 1 million people each. Okay, so this has got nothing to do with remembering anything. It's got to do with forgetting lots of stuff, like forgetting the real history of what was going on.
So it's a misdirection, diversion, the whole Holocaust thing.
Exactly.
Look over here. Focus on this. Forget all the rest of those people. They don't count.
Right. Exactly. And we could be allies with Mao, who murdered 138 million of his people. We could be allies with Stalin, who murdered 30 million of his people. We could even be allies with Pol Pot, who wiped out half of the Cambodian population. Right. We could be friends with all of them, but we could never be allies or friends with Adolf Hitler, which raises another question. What was it about Hitler that made him untouchable? Like he's unthinkable. His ideas are unthinkable. But what I did is I went to the university library and I looked in books published before 1940 talking about the German economy. And what he basically did is he said, well, in Germany, we are not going to allow speculative profit. We will only allow productive profit. If you make a profit, you have to produce something. You can't speculate to do it. From 1930, in 1933, starting in 1933 to 1940, while Americans were suffering horribly in the Great Depression, Germany became the most industrialized modern nation in the world. If you look at pictures of Germany in 1940, it almost looks like 1950s America. Okay. Economy-wise, middle class-wise and stuff. Yeah. I mean, the people profited from it. And what it was is the difference between speculative making money and productive making money. And if you want, everybody complains about the 0.1% accumulating all the wealth. Well, how do they do that? They do that through speculative profit, not through productive profit. Okay. We have 8 men who own half the wealth of the entire earth and 7.6 billion people who own the other half. How did they do it? They did it through speculation. And this is something the left even has. There's a Newsweek writer named Rana Faruhar, and she wrote a book called Makers and Takers, and she explained this process. Okay, she didn't use it in German terms. She didn't even discuss Germany. She just talked about what was actually happening. And she explained, for example, that if GM has $10 million to invest, well, if they invest it in a new plant and opening up another production line and hiring more people, they can get a 5% return on that $10 million. However, if they just take it down to Wall Street and invest it, they can get a 10% return. So why doesn't our economy grow? Well, because people are investing in Wall Street instead of investing in industry and production. Okay. So she's basically saying the same thing that they said in Germany in 1933, 1934. I think the guy's name was Helmar Schott, was their economy minister and stuff that implemented that. And they did away with the central bank. They didn't have a Fed. And instead of issuing banknotes, they issued production notes. If you produced things, you would be paid in production notes, and then you could take those production notes to purchase things that other people produced. Okay, and the economy just flourished to burn.
What happened in Germany in the 1930s was so astonishing. Time magazine actually put Hitler on the cover 3 times. They had to. It was just beyond belief what the German people had accomplished. Anyway, go ahead. We only have about 6-7 minutes left, so you know, Mitch.
Okay, so basically, what I'd like to say to people out there is that when you start destroying these false narratives, okay, you're peeling layers off of an onion. When you get done with one layer of narratives, then you can see another one, and you start peeling that away, and it actually accelerates. You become more and wiser to the false narratives and stuff. I mean, I saw this when I wrote my book. I was just going to write a book about Colombia and my work in Colombia and stuff. But then I said, well, how did I, take on such a dangerous mission? So I had to talk about my childhood, the military, and the police. And then when I started doing that, I said, I really need to tell the people the truth about all the false narratives that they're fed just constantly. They're not seeing the roots of the problem. And it just amazes me. It's been the time that I finished writing my book until now. I see so much more. I know you've experienced this in your life, that as you uncover things, you end up uncovering a lot more than you expected that you was going to uncover.
One door leads to 2, and 2 lead to 8, and it just goes and goes.
Yes. You just keep opening doors. You just start seeing things, and I hate to sound cliche like X-Files or something, but the truth is out there. But
and the sad thing is, the more, and you probably learned this, the more you learn, the more you become aware of, the further you distance yourself from the masses of people, your peers, so-called, your age group, your civilization. You just leave them behind, and you cannot reach back and pull them up to where you are. They have to make that journey, door after door after door, thinking, learning, cogitating, formulating concepts, and reducing things so you can grasp them and understand. But how do you bring people up? It's very hard to do. And I just tell people who ask me this, what do we do? I tell my best friends, I don't want to hear it. Only spend your time with those who are interested. That's all you can do. We don't have access to the mainstream media. They're not about to let us tell this to the world. Not going to happen.
Oh, no, they're about suppressing the truth. I mean, it is so important for them to suppress the truth.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that movie, The Scanners, where he puts on the glasses and he can see the reality and stuff. It's sort of like that. It's sort of like once you start seeing more and more, and you start seeing it everywhere. Okay,
and it is everywhere. Yes,
I would say whatever the government tells you, whatever the educational system tells you, whatever the mainstream media tells you, is a lie. It is a lie. It is a misdirection. It's meant to keep you in darkness. So,
and it works.
It works. Yeah.
They got it down to a science, boy. They know what they're doing.
Well, they even wrote a book back I think it was in the 70s, called Entertaining Us to Death. And, Orwell talked about this, too. If you could keep people busy with soccer games and rugby and stuff like that, then you don't have to do that much brainwashing. Just entertain people to death.
What a good title.
They're not going to care about the important things. Right?
No, and what's the entertainment now? We're always worried about being chipped. No. People are carrying their chips in their hand right now, all day long. It's called a smartphone. That's the chip. They got them.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have to admit my smartphone is a lot smarter than I am. I have trouble operating the thing, It always does things I don't want it to do, so, yeah, but I'm not that hung up on it because I'm only in cell phone range for very few days a month, so I'm not tethered to it like most people. I mean, I
wait till Elon Musk
to town and everybody's just spending all their time.
Wait till Musk gets his satellites up there. How many thousands?
Yeah.
Then you'll be in range all the time.
I think people need to listen to him. Because what he's saying,
it's true.
He's telling you what he's going to do. He's telling you the effect of it, Seth. And, well, people just think it's business talk. They're bored with it. They don't really
No. Did you see the Neuralink video? You must have. The Neuralink. His Neuralink.
Oh, yes.
That's all real. He even admitted, he said, this will be available in the next year. He just threw it off, and nobody got it.
Yeah,
this is where they are.
Well, once again, I work with people. I know people that work at San Diego Labs and Los Alamos National Laboratory. They already have this chip. If they put it in you, they can read your thoughts, and they can put thoughts into your head.
Yeah.
They know they can do this. They have this technology now.
Yes. That Neuralink that he talked about was a small little chip, maybe a 1/4 inch by a 1/4 inch. That goes behind your ear, under your skin, powered by your body's electrical impulses. And there are, 1,000 little fibers that are put into your brain automatically by this robot that comes down over your head. They drill tiny holes. You don't even notice them. And they tuck these fibers in there over the certain parts of your brain. And you are linked. That's it. Neuralink. Look it up. Neuralink. Musk's Neuralink. If you haven't seen it, dear friends, go look at it.
I'll go look at it. I don't think I've seen it yet. I mean,
I'll send you the link. I'll send you the link.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, he just put it right out there. They even had video of this thing inserting these little, tiny little, smaller than hair-like filaments into the skull. Drill a hole, put one in. Drill a hole, put one in. Boom, 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 boom. 1,000 of them or something. And they're all wired up to this little chip that gets tucked behind your ear, and they're going to sell it to people on the basis of you can be hooked up to the cloud. Whatever you want to know, you'll know it. It's right there. It'll be an easy merchandising.
People will run out and purchase it.
They'll line up for miles.
Have to have it.
That's right. Absolutely. No,
So,
this is the future, and it's here.
Oh yeah. It's AI plus the Internet of Things. You know, I mean, it's
Absolutely.
so convenient. It's being sold as something so convenient. So it's like I look back and when I look at my book, I realize that this is opening your eyes light. Okay, it's like you do have to open people's eyes little by little. You know, make them understand the little truths first, and then let them build on that. Right?
Give us in slow motion so everyone can hear the name, exact title of your book, and it's available on Amazon.
Yes, A Man Beyond His Mission by Mitchell Henderson.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that fascinating hour as always. We'll watch it. If you need anything, let me know. I'm here.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jeff. And I'll watch that link. That sounds.
I'll send it over to you.
I do try to follow what Elon Musk says, but I'm not in town all the time, so I don't always see everything.
I gotcha. I'll send it over to you in a couple of minutes. Talk to you next month, if not before. Thank you, Mitchell.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.
Good night. All right, fascinating.